Hello, I am Josh.
I'm Matt.
And this is the MIGCAST presents Raised on Games. Parts.
Yeah, so many parts we don't even know. Part 4.
5. This is part 5.
Mm-hmm.
Part 5. And in this part, we're going to wrap up our 16-bit discussion. What?
Your math is blast, yo.
It is. We're wrapping up our 16-bit discussion with this episode.
From my notes here, brother, we still have to talk about Sega Genesis stories.
Yes, but that's not going to be very long.
Really?
Yep.
I wanted to talk about Virtual Boy.
Not very long.
Game Boy has to get thrown in real quick.
I don't know why.
Because that was
third generation.
There's a reason why. No, it was the last gen, but we never talked about it during the X.
Third gen. Why don't we just do a special about handhelds?
We could.
Good.
But then the whole thing would just be called PlayStation Vita and why it's the best handheld now.
No, it'd be called Nintendo handhelds and why they're the best handhelds in the world.
RPGs alone, I think, is good for an hour. I'm doing the news.
I think the RPG section here needs to get the longest. Like, this needs to be its own segment because
I know
the 16-bit generation RPGs is what
defined the era.
Yeah, it's what made me a big part of who I am gaming wise.
Yeah,
like,
and that's why we're here on this part to talk about Saga.
No, I'm gonna push you off your chair.
Good.
I will.
Don't be a.
I will. You don't be a. Anyways, you're fired. Oh, man! Jesus Christ! What the fuck is wrong with you? Oh my god, dude. Oh, that's so much more editing we have to do now.
Not really, dude. It takes me 2 seconds.
Fine, please stop. Anyways, this is supposed to be my most favorite segment, and you're shitting all over it. Get out of here. I don't need you for this segment. You dick. Compose yourself. Where are you going? Anyways, now that his crazy ass is gone, what are you doing? No, come back. What do you... Oh, God. Anyways. Now that he's gone, we can get serious for a minute. The Super Nintendo brought in... What, are you trying to gain composure? I don't like the way you're not saying anything. You're just stalking around like a fucking creeper. Meow. Anyways.
I'm back.
Super Nintendo.
It's late.
Really marked the really big intro, the big push on role-playing games. You had some on 8-bit. You had Final Fantasy, Dragon Warrior 1, 2, and 3. But two... What is wrong with you?
The big push.
The big push. What's wrong with the big push?
The big pushing.
What the fuck is... You've lost your fucking mind. Look at you. You've gone crazy. What's wrong with you? Oh my god. I don't know you. I don't know you. Are you done? Oh my god. Cuckoo. Cuckoo.
You want to know how I got this craziness?
Anyway, yeah, you were... Oh my god! Did you just pick the... Did the gum just fall out of your mouth and you just picked it up off the paper with your mouth?
Gum comes in paper.
You are a nasty man.
Alright.
Anyways.
All that censored.
Oh, shit.
God damn, that tastes like wood.
Alright. Super Nintendo role-playing games. This is very important to me, okay?
It's important to me as well.
It all starts with Final Fantasy II. Really, Final Fantasy IV, on Super Nintendo. Now, I had played Final Fantasy 1, so I kind of had an idea of what Final Fantasy was. So naturally, when I saw there was a game called Final Fantasy 2, actually 4, for the Super Nintendo, I wanted to play it. So for months, I would rent Final Fantasy 4 from Blockbuster. And you might be saying to yourself, well, Josh, Blockbuster at that time probably had a couple of copies of that game. How did you always get the same one? Well, this is how. I had noticed that the case for Final Fantasy 2 that I always rented had like a seed or a piece of dirt or something stuck in the case, stuck in the Blockbuster case. So I would always rent that case, and it always had my copy of Final Fantasy II in it. So I kept playing it, and that's how I'd always get my the save data. Never got screwed around with, and that game opened my mind up. It opened me up to worlds I'd never seen.
Yeah, more serious stories than you usually see in games.
More serious stories. The music in that game was Nobu Uematsu is by far one of, if not the greatest video game music composer in the world.
Covering all sorts of genres.
In
one game. I mean, he can convey great emotions.
They're playing
eerie suspense.
They're doing that concert on December 26th that I would love to go to. But the music in that game is amazing. The music was so great that's the first game that I ever bought a video game soundtrack for. And mind you, this was before internet, and it was years later. Once I had like money coming in,
that was a big thing
I imported it, and I want to say that soundtrack cost like $30.
Yeah,
and you had to import it. But Final Fantasy II stands out as my favorite Final Fantasy game ever made. The story in it is amazing. It's a deep story. It's a complex story. And Squaresoft did such a great job.
There's death.
Yeah, they did such a great job conveying feelings and really making you care about these characters. And it was a 16-bit game.
Do it with sprites.
Yes, there was no voice acting. It was all text-based. And that game really... I didn't own it until much later in life when I bought it myself because it was such a big game to me. But I rented that game for months on end, beating it, and I actually beat it up at my grandparents used to have a lake cabin, and actually beat it up there one day.
It was an epic feat.
And I
never played Final Fantasy II, but I watched him play. That was a lot of my life with the role playing games was mainly watching him. So getting the stories without having to deal with grinding to me, fighting enemies, a lot of that was just daunting and it was too confusing for me. And it wasn't until I got older that I began to grasp how that is. And I think nowadays I play more RPGs than Josh because I'm all into that Japanese stuff. But yeah, back then it was all about watching Josh play, and Final Fantasy II was crazy stuff in that game. Whales,
flying whales, moons like that.
Final Fantasy II has been to the moon more recently than NASA. Think about that.
That's true. 2 moons. Well, they only went to the one. But...
Forgot about that. Didn't they have them crazy...
Lunarians?
And there was one... What was one of the boss fights? It was like a moon or underground or one of these areas, and there was some creepy chicks. It wasn't the sisters or whatever. There was some other creepy character chick. She's like a doll or some weird thing.
The Calbrina. That was in the underground.
See, I remember this stuff.
Yeah, like that game is, and like I said, the music. That's the game that really finally made me appreciate and love video game music. That single game. Yeah, everything about that game was just great. Like, it is the single best Final Fantasy game ever made.
I think
the single best.
Yeah.
But while Final Fantasy II is my favorite Final Fantasy game, and probably one of my most favorite on the Super Nintendo, it is certainly not the only great role-playing game on Super Nintendo.
There's so many contenders that are up there.
The Super Nintendo was just home to so many great role-playing games.
Do you want to talk about some of the lesser ones? Because I know where your heart leads towards one.
Yeah, there was a lot. There was amazing games.
I have a few to rattle off, depending on which ones you want to talk about first. Some of these aren't necessarily role-playing games, but they're games we haven't brought up yet. But you had Secret of Mana.
Secret of Mana, which I believe Cole introduced us to.
Yeah.
My buddy Cole played that and introduced that to me. And that was a much different game. It wasn't a role-playing game like I was used to. Because I was very used to like Final Fantasy 1, Final Fantasy 2, and that style of role-playing game. But that was more of an action RPG-oriented game. And that's another game that I absolutely love. And again, another Squaresoft game and another game that had amazing music.
Co-op.
Like amazing music.
You
Yeah,
can co-op
like
that game.
Yeah.
They had the little dial, if I remember correctly. You'd scroll through the dial in real time.
Yeah, somebody else could play as one of the other characters. Like
that predated Chrono Trigger, if I remember correctly.
Oh, God, yeah.
Because Chrono Trigger kind of took some subtle things from that game, I think.
Basically, you just see the enemies on land, but we'll get to Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, oh, God, yeah. I think that is up there with...
But stuff like that. Breath of Fire 1, I don't ever remember playing, but I do remember playing Breath of Fire 2. I do remember that. That was a great game. Capcom's role-playing games, their music, I wasn't, like... For me at the time, it was really all about Squaresoft's games. Their role-playing games had just amazing music.
Sorry, I took the gum out. It's unprofessional.
And then
bubbles.
It's okay. And then, and I remember, I'm trying to remember when it came out. I can actually pull it up here, but I remember my father took me to Funkaland.
Austin Powers Fasha.
Austin Powers Fasha. Took me to Funkaland because I wanted to pick up a game. And let's see. The Secret of... I hope the dog gets that and dies.
Peter!
It was called Secret of Evermore. And it caught my attention because it was a lot like Secret of Mana. I thought it was a little bit easier than Secret of Mana. And that could be because at the time, I think Japan was still on the whole... Americans aren't as smart as Japanese, so they need their role-playing games dummied down. And the funny thing about Secret of Evermore, that came out October 1st, 1995. That game never came out in Japan. It only came out in the Europe region and here. But I remember Dad taking me by that, and I remember that being like $70.
I'm ruining this.
Just go away.
Oh, but it was about a boy and a dog.
And his dog.
He had like a bone. Because I remember the advertising was like prominent in a lot of these magazines.
They advertised the shit out of that game. I remember that being all over magazines. I remember TV commercials for that game.
Sorry, the gum I was chewing on made me short. It was a special gum.
So that was... I'm going to cut your Virtual Boy and your Sega Genesis segment right out of this game.
The gum shrunk my ass. Ah!
Anyways.
Security!
I think I'm bleeding in my chest.
Alright. Serious Matt is back. Guys, I'm sorry. I have mental illness. It's a very serious topic.
A funny story. I remember, might have been before Final Fantasy 2. I remember renting, dog's gonna eat it and die. I remember renting Lufia.
Oh,
I think it was Lufia 2, maybe. From Best Buy. Wow. From Blockbuster. I remember being pissed and having my mom take it back and return it because I kept dying. And I couldn't figure out why I kept dying. Well, you want to know why I kept dying? Because my stupid ass forgot to equip my equipment. That's how noobish I still was at the time. I didn't realize I had to equip gear. So I did play Lufia for all about...
Lufia. It's Lufia.
Lufia.
It's French.
Lufia.
Yeah.
Lufage. Hey, Swage. For about 5 minutes before I returned that. And then you had like your unorthodox.
Well, I have on here 7th Saga.
Yes, I was just going to say 7th Saga.
I remember my thoughts here. I distinctly remember 7th Saga, the world map, how you just had the dots that would creep towards you. And
it was just dots. You could leave your controller and leave yourself standing in one place, and things would move towards you.
Yeah. I don't think you'd get attacked if you just...
Oh, yeah, you would.
Oh,
it sure as hell would.
Yeah.
The thing that I didn't like about that game, like I go back and I play it now because it was a good game and I do like it. At the time, I wasn't a big fan of it because it was really hard. That game was really
I remember
fucking hard.
Us having playing through that in a couple different spurts because of the toughness.
Yeah, it's hard, and like that's a game that requires like you get to a certain point in that game and you need to grind your ass out in order to get to where you need to be. Like,
yeah.
And I didn't like it as much because...
it was Enix, okay.
Yeah, Enix did that.
I wanted to make sure, 7th Saga was Enix.
They did kind of like what Phantasy Star did, and like at the time you gotta keep in mind, like really the only thing I think Sega had going for it, RPG-wise, was the Phantasy Star series.
Yeah.
So this game did kind of like Phantasy Star series where you saw the backs of your characters, and then like your characters would attack. And I wasn't a big fan of that. But... going back and looking back on it, like I play that now, and that is a really good game. Really good game, actually. So there was that.
They had a sequel to that too, but I can't remember what it was called. I'm not going to make a joke.
They did have a Son of Saga too.
Okay.
They did. I've played a little bit of the import.
Probably not released in America.
So that never made out.
No localization.
Yeah, it was never translated. And then you had like some more of like your action RPG type games, like you had Soul Blazer.
Oh yes,
Soul Blazer was really good.
God, I love that. Yep. That was a cool game because we were talking earlier about how you would go through and you would, as you fought enemies, the little green little thing. Well, I don't know if they're like spirits
like
or
orbs
souls.
Or something. Yeah, soul. Yeah, it was probably souls.
Would go and they'd fly and they'd like repair parts of the map or like people would come back to life.
Make your like rebuild your village basically,
and you'd like make it more pure. And so that was the big point of that game. That was cool. Yeah,
so that was real big. I don't think any Dragon Quest games came out for Super Nintendo here. During that time, not here. In Japan, they were. Dragon Quest was huge in Japan, but nothing Dragon Quest wise came out, I think, for Super Nintendo here. Same with Legend of Mana had 2 sequels, or Secret of Mana had 2 sequels, but they never came out here. What?
Is that right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
You had Secret of Mana, but then Seiken Densetsu.
Oh. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Sounds like a fighting game.
Well, Japan had Seiken Densetsu 2 and Seiken Densetsu 3. We never got those.
Yeah.
I've played 2 and 3.
Well, I played Seiken Den Dogs.
On the emulator. That was really good. No, you're not. You've ruined it all for me. Everything. Just stop. I want to record. No, I'm just kidding. You're fine. I love you.
This has been Matt from the MIGCAST signing off.
No, don't leave. I need you to stay and talk more.
I have stories, man.
Well, yeah, because the other 2 really big, and there was Super Mario RPG, but that was another one that my buddy Cole played a lot. I never really played that one.
Sell you on that.
Yeah, he did have to sell me on that.
Sell you on it. Didn't close the deal.
Nope, didn't close the deal. But there were 2 other really big role playing games that came out for Super Nintendo that were very near and dear to my heart.
Near perfect games.
Near perfect games. The
Super Nintendo had a lot.
Next one being Final Fantasy III.
Yes.
That game, and what was funny was when that game first came out, I didn't like it.
When you were seeing the press.
I was first seeing the press talk about it. But yeah, I did get that game early. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, good stories. My hair is
the magazines they were showing, like you had like the Bio Blaster and Magitech armor, and the game just looked very futuristic.
Espers. What's this weird Esper
stuff?
Like
the game looked really futuristic, and I was at a time in my life where I wanted fantasy, and that didn't look fantasy to me. That looked sci-fi, and I was like, I don't know about this.
A guy who had just been to the moon, been underground.
Anyways,
no, I know what you're saying though, because the imagery, like you had,
it looked super sci-fi. Yeah.
Oh god, yeah. You had guys with like weapon guns.
Yeah. So I didn't know if I was gonna be sold on it, but
I already have the music in my head when you hear.
The music. I mean, the music in 2 was amazing. The music in 3 was mind blowing. Mind blowing. That was the second video game soundtrack that I imported, and that one was expensive because that was like 4 discs of music.
Yeah, it was about 4. And then I think all the Final Fantasies from that point on, their major soundtracks were about 4 discs.
Yeah, and
I don't know. I can't speak to 5 because that didn't come out here.
Yeah, that didn't come out until much later.
Yeah. I just remember the cute little intro with the guy riding his chocobo.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding.
But we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about 6. The much more superior.
5 comes before 6.
That's true.
But 5 did not come here, so now
not in Japan, because again, Japan didn't release those RPGs here for
6 has come too.
Whatever. But our mother.
Sorry. Oh yeah, this is a really good story.
She had to go to
Dominic's or whatever in the shopping center.
It's a grocery store and we were with her, but we wanted to go to Funkaland and take a look around.
Shopping center.
Yeah, same shopping as a couple stores down. She's like, yeah, that's fine. So we go there, and they had in one of their little kiosks the store copy, the demo copy of Final Fantasy III.
Back when they used to turn the fucking arcade demo machines on.
Circuit Breakers 4 and 9.
For when he worked there.
For when we worked there.
We never had working demos on. None of them work. Sorry, kids.
Nope. Oh, they did. We just after 5 minutes. Well, you get shithead parents that would like drop their kids off here. All right, I'm going shopping.
God, back when you could do it. See, nowadays, dude, those parents would get arrested, man.
Yep. Yeah, you can't do it.
Underage kids, they just drop them off like an hour later. And we had a couple return customers that were actually really cool that we would just,
Oh, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We'll be talking about that when we hit the 32.
Dude, that's its own special
Oh, yeah.
itself.
Yeah. Oh, that is like its own special in itself. So, anyways, so we went over there and they had Final Fantasy 3 in their little kiosk, and I played it and loved it. Absolutely loved it. That intro fires up, and you get that music, and you get that serene scene of all three Magitekks walking, and they're like, fuck, the music in that game was so good. Oh, boy.
Just hands for you.
Spare fingers. But, so we were playing it, and my mom got done with her shopping, and she came and found us at Funkoland. And she came in, and she saw that I was absolutely in love with this game. Pretty sure I didn't ask her if we could get it. I think she could just tell that this was something special to me. And you gotta keep in mind, I'd already played 2 at this time, and loved that. So, naturally, she probably knew that I love this one, and she just offered to buy it for me. I'm trying to remember when it officially came out.
Yeah, because you totally legit got a demo store copy.
That game came out October 11th of 1994. It's fine.
Can you go out?
Maybe.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm not well.
No,
today
he's not in the head.
Which one?
Yeah. So I want to say it was probably, dude, it had to have been like the first week of October.
Yeah, you got it a week or two early.
Yeah. So they had this demo copy that that Square had probably sent them to show off at the store and not to sell, but they ended up selling it to us. And I want to say we paid $80 for that thing. But damn it, was it money well spent, because I bought that shit, and then that's all I played for months. I remember sitting in my parents' room, because I think Super Nintendo might have been in there at some point for some reason. Sitting in my parents' room playing that. And this is how much this game meant to me, is there are certain days when, and it's got to be cooler out, like around now times, certain days when a breeze will come rolling through, and I shit you not, it transports me back to that time sitting in my parents' room playing Final Fantasy VI. And I remember I was on the airship, and it was still in the regular world. It was before the World of Ruin. Yeah. And I clearly remember a breeze going through their house, through this house. And I don't know if it was that, but there will be times when now, even in my older adult life, I will get hit by that certain breeze.
Oh, it gives you the chills.
And it takes me back to that moment, because that game was really super special to me, which is amazing considering it started off as a game that I didn't think I was going to like. Ended up becoming one of my favorite.
Yeah,
Final Fantasy.
It was like my second first.
Yeah, it's my second favorite Final Fantasy game, and by this time the internet was out. And I used to play with my buddy Cole, and we used to play the hell out of that game. And like I said, the internet was out, and there was a site called GameFAQs, which is still around. And we would go and we'd like read up like on all the secrets, like, oh, there's a rumor you can bring General Leo back to life. And the thing that made Final Fantasy 3 so great was not just the music, because we all know how much I love the music, but the story in that game was fantastic. And there was no real one main character in that entire game. Oh, yeah. You had a cast of people, and each people had their own story.
Deep stories.
And
man.
Yeah, like some really deep stories.
Cyan.
Cyan. Like you had like your characters that seemed to be a little bit more developed than others. People like Celis, Terra, Edgar, Sabin, Locke, who seemed to be almost like your main characters, but everybody had a story.
Wasn't there a theory that Shadow was Realm's dad? Have you ever looked that theory up? It's actually got some pretty interesting...
like I said, there were a lot of theories, and at this point, the internet was around, and I remember having pages upon pages of stuff printed out and reading this game, because me and my buddies were playing. That was another game you could play co-op.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody else could control another character in the party and put in commands.
Yeah.
But that game was amazing because, you started out in the first world like you had, and then halfway through the game, you get the world of ruin.
Oh, I was thinking before that.
Everything gets fucked up.
Yeah, I was thinking along the Raft when everything gets split up and you get to choose who to play. Yeah, that was groundbreaking, man.
They split into 3 separate parties. Well, and then
Locke,
like I said, Locke,
who was in the town of whatever that town was.
Yeah, Phasma.
Where he was trying to find Celis or whatever, who was captured.
Yep, he finds Celis, yeah.
You had Sabin and Cyan. No, that was before Cyan or whatever.
No, you had Sabin.
Yes.
Who
you had
who comes across Cyan. He comes across Cyan.
Gao.
And then you come across Gao.
And then there's the little velvet.
The Velt.
I'm sorry. I keep having to attend to something. I apologize.
And then you had Edgar and Terra and Bannon. And then you had the World of Ruin that comes around. And all of a sudden you went from having a full party to only having one character, Celes. You're all by yourself, and then the whole point of the game from that point forward was really opened up because it was go find party members so you can make your party bigger, but then everything in that game at that point,
Reggie.
Yeah, everything at that game at that point kind of just became like side quest stuff. That game was huge. They had the other Espers you could go get, the ultimate weapon you could go and get, just a bunch of relics you could get and equip. Like that game was really, really amazing, and easily, definitely my second favorite Final Fantasy game. Final Fantasy IV being my favorite, and Final Fantasy VI being my second favorite. And I think those 2 games, along with the next game we're going to talk about, is what. Though these 3 games really helped make Super Nintendo like a really special part of my gaming life that I look back on. And I say, yeah, you know what? 16-bit Super Nintendo, like that era was the best. Stuff looked great. Games were fun. Like Final Fantasy games now are just garbage.
Play the games.
Shut up, Reggie.
Play the games.
Shut up, Reggie.
God, I tell you, man, I fucking deal with this guy every fucking episode. He just keeps trying to get in. Can't get in yet. So close. We stopped him again. I'm back. I'm normal. The Reggie situation's been dealt with for another day. I hear you're talking about Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah, just about done talking about Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah. I remember.
I have what are your memories of Final Fantasy VI?
Final Fantasy IV. Now, mind you, I've watched Josh, play Final Fantasy 1. Dragon Quest. I never enjoyed, I've said this before, I never really enjoyed role-playing games at that age. For me, being the younger brother, it was always about watching bigger brother play these games, mainly Final Fantasy III. But what was interesting to me was seeing just the depth in this game. Like Josh explained, like there was just so much going on, some weird, some amazing, the freaking opera scene, just so much content and depth in there.
Fucking opera scene is amazing.
A lot of these RPGs nowadays that come out, they have a lot of they're long. Like they
have a lot of pretty graphics, but that's it.
Well, no, I wasn't like getting so much into that. I was saying like a lot of the modern RPGs, yes, they have pretty graphics, but the game's 100 hours long. Oh, that's great. What kind of content is there? Square at that time was pushing these RPGs out that were really long, but they were jam-packed with content. There wasn't no filler big story events. Like there was a lot of interesting story stuff, like some of that Zozo stuff, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
The freaking Ghost Train. Yeah. That had a whole story in itself.
Yeah, suplex a fucking train. How much more epic does that get?
Game of
you suplex
life.
A train.
Yeah, but what was the sad? There was a ghost story kind of thing on there.
Science family gets murdered.
Yeah, missing the train.
His
whatever.
Mother or his wife and his son.
Yeah, and it was a messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not everything. Kafka destroying the world, the murder of General Leo,
Yeah.
That game was really deep. And
it won't win any Oscars. I mean,
I
don't know what Kefka did wrong.
It was really good, but I think...
I think that has a competitor that... man, I don't know, man. It's hard to pick for me which one was the best, because it's one of those things where when you look at Mega Man 2, this is going back to this is a quick tangent. A lot of people say Mega Man 2 is the best. 3 was the peak, and then from there I don't think they really built on much. But I want to say, I know Final Fantasy 4 holds a special place in your heart, probably because that's the first time an RPG had done things to you.
Yeah, it really spoke to me.
And I still think that 6, from what, I've played about half of it and watched him play through all of it, like once or twice. I still think that's just the better game because Square was learning to walk. And they finally kind of got that down. And then the following game that I'm sure you want to talk about and probably finish with.
Yeah, because don't get me wrong. Final Fantasy 4 is my favorite Final Fantasy game. It's not my most favorite RPG, though.
Well, Final Fantasy 7 is the best game ever.
No, it's not. Final Fantasy 7 was great. Don't get me wrong. Final Fantasy 7 was great. But anybody that says Final Fantasy 7 was the best Final Fantasy is delusional. Because it wasn't the best Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 7 was good. Not the best. It just wasn't. And Square... in all honesty, stopped caring about story after 9, because every Final Fantasy after 9 has been kind of just a piece of shit.
Well, and we talked, though, about in one of the previous episodes, I think it was part 1 of the 8-bit stuff, about was it just because that's when you had discovered and fully delved into RPGs that you feel that way? Is 7 truly on a better, higher, or are you able to view these things, like objectively or not objectively or whatnot?
But see,
where you go into the game...
I don't know, because I still go back and I still play these old games, though. Yeah. So, I'm always getting an updated reference point of, all right, I've played Final Fantasy 13, and now I'm going back and playing Final Fantasy, 4 and Final Fantasy 6, and it's like, yeah, no, these are still far superior Final Fantasy games.
Yeah, they had way more, I think, story.
And they had more character in them. The music was better in them.
Every character was important.
Yeah.
Except for, what was it, Umaru? Fucking
yeah,
Saga,
Umaru. No, Strago.
Go-Go.
Yeah, Umaru and Go-Go were kind of like just toss-offs, yeah.
That was just, okay, here's some extra characters.
But while Final Fantasy 4 and 6 were great games, I think I can honestly say my favorite role-playing game of all time has got to be Chrono Trigger. Yeah. Chrono Trigger God, dude. That game,
the fighting system.
That game is really beyond words to describe how great of a game that is.
So that's it, everyone. No,
so we're done with that. No, the thing with Chrono Trigger is Chrono Trigger came out towards the end of the Super Nintendo's life cycle, because you got to keep in mind that PlayStation came out in '96. Yes, it did.
Oh, we know that for a fact? I just had my mind ingrained at about 94, 95.
No, you're way too early.
I'm off.
Yeah, I think you're way too early. I'm pretty sure it was 96. I could be wrong.
I think it's, well, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, but
no.
We didn't
introduced 94. Yeah. It came out in 94. Yep.
That's me.
Wee. Yeah, it came out in... Okay, so then I'm right in saying that...
We got the PS4, or the P... Yeah. We got a PS4 in the 90s. Time traveling.
So see, and you had Chrono Trigger came out on August 22nd, 1995. So this game... Us, it was the tail end of Super Nintendo at this time. PlayStation had already been out for almost a year at that point.
We did not get a PlayStation until 96.
Oh, yeah.
Spring or summer,
yep.
If I remember.
So you had Chrono Trigger, which, at the end of the Super Nintendo's life, it was one of the better looking games on that system, because at that point everybody had figured out how to tap the power of the Super Nintendo. But that game was, and again, that game was the third soundtrack that I purchased and had imported. God, yeah, because that music in that game...
The pace of that game is just awesome, too. Starts off a little slow. Wake up, Chrono.
Well, and it's funny because I remember your friend... what was his name?
Oh, Trip.
Trip.
Yeah.
I remember your friend Trip brought it by. Richard.
The third.
Triple.
Yeah.
Oh, really? That's how that worked? Oh.
Yeah.
I remember he came by and he had it. And again,
he was aware of it.
Wasn't super big on it at my first glance because I was like, again, it didn't look like Final Fantasy. You know, it looked different.
Blanket's done.
Like, sorry. I was used to enemies over here, heroes over here, and you fight that way. And with Chrono Trigger, it kind of borrowed elements of Final Fantasy games and games like Secret of Mana, where you could see your enemies on screen, and when you engaged them, your characters would fan out, and then the battle would happen. You'd take turns, and you'd input commands like you would in any normal role-playing game. But that game, again, had just an amazing fucking story.
They were they called techs? I
Yep.
don't remember what they were. Yeah,
Techs.
where the teammate that was cool.
Different teammate combinations.
Final Fantasy 3 didn't have that.
No.
I know Final Fantasy 3 had the different. They had like the casino, like you'd have like the blitzes. Was that what that was called?
Yeah, they had blitzes.
They had was it Setzer had the gambling.
Mm-hmm.
They had unique stuff in Final Fantasy 3. But Chrono Trigger had
like the techs, and depending on who was in your party, that would change what double techs you would know.
Yeah.
It would change what triple techs you would know. And the other thing that made Chrono Trigger really, really amazing game was a little feature called New Game Plus, where once you beat the game, you got to keep your stats. You got to keep most of all of your gear. In fact, I think you got to keep all your gear. And you went through and played the game again. And now I know some people at the time might be like, well, why the fuck would you want to play a role-playing game again? Like, you just beat it. Why would you want to play it again? Well, it's because Chrono Trigger had multiple endings.
Yeah, didn't they have like 13 endings?
I believe.
That's crazy.
What was the...
Because I was aware of you chasing some of these endings. Because I know different characters had... obviously different endings, but were they just basically like nowadays a lot of them will use just here's an added scene mixed into the mix, some things are different?
I'll tell you right now.
Please do. But no, I really have distinct memories of Chrono Trigger. Was what I loved the most was obviously the time travel element of it. Basically Marl or Marley, did we ever find out what exactly her name is? Marley, like Bob Marley. Anyways, so yeah, she accidentally gets sucked into the time machine, and we find out that she, is a descendant or ancestor of, she's the princess at the beginning of the game when he meets her.
Yep.
If I remember correctly, right? But when she goes back to the old time, she gets mistaken for, some lady, the queen or princess or whatever again. And so just the time element of that was just so cool. Being able to see places evolve when you would go from one time to the next. The freaking trial, man. You remember that? You remember how hard that is to actually get
12
found
endings.
Guilty?
12 endings. The DS, iOS, and Android version added a 13th ending.
So there you go. That's insane, man.
And it's a preview of Chrono Cross.
That had to be unheard of.
Yep.
At the time. I mean, you didn't really see that. Wow.
Yeah, 12 endings. Like that game. So that was your whole driving point. And you had to experiment with the different endings because depending on when you'd go and fight the last boss, Lavos, that would affect what ending you would get. And I remember I have gotten every single ending in that game.
Yeah.
It was tedious, and I did have to use like strategy guides and stuff after a while.
I don't think you got the 14th ending, though. What?
I'm waiting for you to make some kind of smart-ass comment.
Oh, no, I thought there was a 14th ending.
There's 12 endings. 13 in the DS.
No,
iOS.
There's 14 on the what's it called one. Where after you fight Lavos, he opens up and outside comes his baby, Aftra.
Oh, Jesus. Aftra.
Continue. I've derailed your episode. Yeah, you know what, guys? I apologize.
Just shut up.
I'm crazy. No, this was a special episode to you.
Fucked
Some of
it
the
all
stuff
up
that
for
you're
me.
talking about. Yeah, I know. Now you know how I felt about TGS and the Vita. Praise the Lords.
Oh, no. So Chrono Trigger, by far, my most favorite role-playing game.
Future.
Yeah,
God,
everything.
Dang. You remember
just
going,
the music.
Robo, when you go to his freaking area, just the change of the environment.
Well, not just that, but think about... That's right, I just picked my ear and looked at it.
Dude, I'm doing that too through this hat.
Think about the first time you go to the future and
the rain,
you're outside in that, in the destroyed world, and the music playing there.
Yeah,
the music is so. It has such a sense and tone of despair and loss.
What were the different sections called in the future thing? Were they like dome something?
Yeah, you had the different dome names, like Protodome.
Yes.
Yeah, like.
God damn.
But your music in that zone, like seriously, it really set the tone for just like, wow, like this world is fucked. Yeah. Like, and the music, that game probably has the single best soundtrack of any video game as far as
it really was. And I believe that was a soundtrack that had a lot of it was a mixed composer deal.
Yes.
I thought Nobu did a couple tracks for that, but he was not the main guy. In fact, the main guy that did that was I want to say something Masudo. He's the guy that does a lot of the Xenoblade Chronicles stuff. Let me look this up.
Well, and you can hear it in Xenoblade stuff.
Oh god, yeah.
You hear a lot of the Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross.
Yeah. Why? Because I know the main here. I'm pulling that up right now. Music of Chrono Trigger.
Oh my god. Yeah. But yeah, that
Mitsudo, Yasunori Mitsudo, and the Nobu Uematsu.
Okay, so
yeah. I think Nobu did like 2 or 3 songs.
Nobu that man's a god.
Yeah. If you heard great music during the 16th
so
era,
like, and I think that's like Donkey Kong Country, Super Metroid. They all had great soundtracks, but I think it was the Final Fantasy games. It was everything Square Enix.
Yeah, it was RPGs.
Yeah,
alone.
Square Enix I feel was really at the height of their power during the Super Nintendo era.
Yeah.
You know, they still had it going on for them in the PlayStation era, but Super Nintendo, I think, is where Square... Sorry, it was just Squaresoft at the time. I think that's where Squaresoft planted their flag and said, like, yeah, hey, we're here, motherfuckers. Try to take the RPG crown from us.
It was... They knew what they were doing, and they just made it better.
Yeah.
Every time one of the new games that they did came out, they just built on it.
And it makes me sad because, like, you look like how many Squaresoft games have come out for PlayStation, like, 3. Mm-hmm. And then, like, you look at, like, Super Nintendo, like, dude, they had, like, 6 or 7 fucking games in that entire system's life cycle.
It goes back to, I mean, it's not just getting old, because I know people sit there, and we're not the only ones that feel this way, but it's like when you look at a lot of the modern systems and the games that we currently have, how the mighty have fallen. I mean, you don't have Mega Man. Mega Man's gone.
You don't.
You don't have... You have Final Fantasy, but it's not.
It's not
Fantasy
any.
We know.
You keep hoping that you hope that 15 is going to be different,
no,
and it's
it never will be.
You know, you don't have Castlevania.
I don't understand.
You don't have Metroid, like none, like
Nintendo. Well, I'm going to go on a side tangent here. Metroid sells like shit. I don't know. You should look at the sales numbers.
I don't fucking get.
The series does not sell well.
I think that's because they just don't know what they're doing with it.
Well, no, because even Metroid 1, Super Metroid, they also like shit.
But you look at what's it called? Games. You look at games that are coming out now, like Axiom Verge and Metroid clones that sell fucking great.
I'm with you on that. I think a lot of these companies need to go back and because people of our age, these people that have been around, are in a position that,
we're starting to, people our age are designing games.
We got money. We're looking to stay into games. Like it's not, I'm not falling out of love with games, but I miss all that old stuff.
Yeah. My love for games though is definitely not as strong now as it was during the 16-bit and 32-bit era. Like it's not.
Well, I just don't understand the whole, why you guys got to spend 4 years making a game that's just pretty when you have, it's not a news episode, but you have Disgaea 5 coming out next week, and it's stuck to the basics. They've made it prettier, but it's the same, like, little crazy game. Like, I want Square to sit there. Why don't you give us Final Fantasy 16? You give us the pretty graphics with, like, the sprites, HD, 1080p, make that shit run at 60 FPS, and you just give us a classic-looking Final Fantasy game that is not on mobile OS.
Yeah.
Make it for the new systems and just make it really pretty.
That's really a shame because seriously, the Super Nintendo was a haven of beautiful.
God, it's what set itself apart from
beautiful role playing games. I mean, absolutely beautiful role playing games. So many great role playing games came out for that system.
Well, you think the fact that you can put 60 to 100 hours or more into one of these games, and then you could go and play another one of these role playing games for 60 to 100 plus hours and get a totally different experience.
I remember my first playthrough through Final Fantasy IV took me 85 hours. I couldn't tell you the minutes, but I never will forget the 85 hours.
But then you could play Final Fantasy III, and aside from switching out some gear, I mean, yeah, a lot of that was different, but you knew what you were getting with an RPG in terms of like the gear, blah, blah, blah. But the story, it was never rehashed bullshit.
No.
Like, I mean, oh yeah, it was a ninja on Final Fantasy 2.
It was always something different.
They're Shadow and 6 and they're ninjas. No, but I mean, the stories and just the character, that was all different, and it was unique, and it was all fresh back then. And that's, I think, what made that so special.
Well, and like I said, and like the music. The music nowadays is just not as good, which is the real shame, because music nowadays should be better because you can do more. Our sound processors are better. Like, you can do more with instruments now than you could back then. And I don't understand why music back then,
I will say,
so much better.
As much as I thought Nobu has slipped, the newer Final Fantasy games he's getting.
He did some stuff for 14, didn't he?
He did a lot. Most of 14, that is phenomenal.
And 14 is basically a love letter to Final Fantasy fans from
not the first
Realm
Reborn.
Reborn. It's a Final Fantasy love letter. Like, the thing is great.
We're gonna do eventually this will evolve. Like, at this point, probably episode part 20.
Yeah.
This will evolve into PC gaming, and we're gonna get into MMOs because holy shit, think about that.
Oh yeah,
the MMO.
It's in a topic all on itself. Like, this is we're gonna have to do one more part for this era because
we gotta talk about
because we do gotta talk every time.
Yeah, you're done.
Every time. There you go. Because we do got to talk a little bit about Sega Genesis.
Little Virtual Boy.
We do have to talk very briefly about Virtual Boy.
No, I mean, come on, dude. See, for me, it was hard for me to get into role-playing games because, like, all right, we had one Super Nintendo. Josh was the big gamer. RPGs just seemed too intense for me to really grasp, so I would watch Josh. So I had to kind of have my own thing. And so I tend to stick to these not as good systems that were just unique, and I've been doing that ever since. I see what you're doing out of the corner of my eye. And quite frankly, I'm offended.
Good.
Okay. But yeah, I just, you got me messed up, man.
Good.
But no, so I mean, yeah, I kind of went towards these lesser favored systems that I still had great experiences with, and so I don't think they should be shunned.
No, they shouldn't. And
I think these systems are ahead of their time, but yet also extremely limited.
It's a part of this generation, and I think we've pretty fairly and wholly covered, Super Nintendo and what we did with Super Nintendo.
We might have missed some stuff, sports games. We might have missed some, like rock and roll racing.
Super Nintendo was, like I said, a very big, important part of our life, and there's almost too much to talk about.
Yeah.
I think we did a really good, fair job hitting all the games that made an impact on us.
It is, and I'm sure historians down the road, once the gaming industry is like around for 100 years and they are able to look back at stuff, I will still say hands down, Super Nintendo is the single best system in terms of library of the unique games they had on there, how good the games were. It's not just that you had a couple good titles. No, you had freaking knockout
amazing games.
Titles that Hall of Fame, like you make a list of top 20 games on the SNES and you have to like make some really tough cuts just to trim that down.
Absolutely.
Look on YouTube for that and you'll see people always making that argument that it was kind of hard to do this and that.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I really like the Super Nintendo really was like that. I feel like it was the golden age of gaming, man. It was at its height. It's some of my most fondest memories, not all my fondest memories, because I do have a lot of great PlayStation memories. We have a ton of great PlayStation memories coming up to talk to you guys about. Like a ton.
Lean away from the mic to yawn.
Oh yeah. But I feel like Super Nintendo. That Super Nintendo will always hold a special place in my heart.
Oh, it really will, man.
The best gaming system I've ever played on.
And Sega had 3 buttons. That had so many. That had 6.
Well, Sega had 6 after. Remember they had the A, B, C, and XYZ. They did like the master controller.
The Saturn?
No.
Or was that a master controller?
That was Sega Genesis.
Woo!
Yeah, Sega Genesis later on they did the controller.
Ric Flair.
Yeah. So, but we're going to talk about that in the next episode where we'll close out the 16.
Bridge. Yeah, we're going to bridge. Yeah. We should probably lump all the odd.
Well, we'll have to lump like Saturn.
Because you got to Sega CD.
All that stuff. We're going to have
all the CD-based.
All the stuff that bridged up bridged and led to the behemoth that became PlayStation. And we can even talk about the heartbreak between PlayStation and Nintendo. Cause
oh my God, Nintendo.
There's quite a story back there behind that too.
In fact, I'm going to end also because a couple parts ago, and we kept talking about console wars. There's a great story in there because there's other deals that were going on, not just outside of Sony, that Nintendo
sort of had.
Yeah,
I think Super Nintendo, really marked the high point of Nintendo. I mean, granted, they did. Was it the Wii? The Wii did really well.
Well, yeah. Think about your favorite band. How that first album can be a mega hit, and you could be a one-hit wonder. Yeah. The video game market had crashed. The NES came out, and I'm sure all the skeptics, all these business journalists,
it's going to fail.
We're sitting there saying, let's see it happen again. And holy shit, it did. And not only did SNES knock it out of the park, but then all this other competition started coming in, and they also are having success. So I think that's when things started to really gain more momentum to obviously where it is today.
They absolutely dominated the 16-bit era.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Sega Genesis could not hold a light to them.
Yeah. Well, Sega Genesis had a couple big months where they started strong and taking it, and then no, you can't keep up with it.
Nope. So yeah. Then next time, the next episode will be part 6 of Raised on Games, but it'll close out the 16-bit era and it'll start leading into the 32-bit era.
We're going to be getting into some. It's funny how we have all these great memories of these games when we were younger, and then I start to worry because I think as we get to some of these later, there's going to be a lot of stuff that I think that you are maybe kind of seeing, and I'm thinking we're going to go longer on like PSX and stuff.
Oh, we very well could because you got to keep in mind.
Think of the experiences.
You got to keep in mind. Super Nintendo, we were still relying on mommy and daddy to buy us games.
Oh, yeah.
PlayStation came out, still needed mommy and daddy, but towards a little bit later in PlayStation, we could start buying stuff.
Not to mention better storage capacity, better graphics.
Come on. And
you had better ways to tell story.
Mod chips. That's... The more and more I think about it, this Raised on Games special has many, many, many parts left to it.
This is going to be an abominational beast.
Yeah, this whole thing's going to be long. Yeah. Whenever we're done and we're all famous, we can remaster it
for the antics earlier.
Yeah,
no, that's not going to happen.
We can remaster it and we can put out the definitive, the DVD, the Blu-ray edition of MIGCAST presents Raised on Games, an entire Blu-ray full of these episodes. So
craziness.
Yeah, so make sure you come back next week so you can check out part 6 where we'll finish up 16-bit and we'll start talking about PlayStation.
Cross that bridge to the 32-bit.
Yep. So, see you guys then.
Till next time.
Till next time.
Peace.
Holla.